President-elect Donald J. Trump has recently selected U.S. Senator Marco Rubio to become U.S. Secretary of State, yet despite of having more people on the list who technically align more with the America First movement, this has many people wondering what we can expect from Rubio as America's top diplomat. Do you want to figure it out? Stay, because in this video, we will recapitulate Marco Rubio's views and career when it comes to foreign affairs. Let's go. Marco Rubio has been a prominent figure in American foreign policy, especially within the Republican Party, since taking office in 2011. One of the things that characterizes him the most is his hard line towards dictatorial regimes abroad, especially within the Americas, specifically the socialist regimes of Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. But his focus goes even further by his criticism towards Iran and China, having a very tough relationship with the latter. Rubio, as a Cuban American, has been a vocal critic of the Cuban government and an advocate for maintaining the U.S. sanctions on Cuba. He opposed President Obama's efforts to normalize relations with the island nation, arguing that easing sanctions would only empower the Castro regime without improving human rights. Rubio also supported the Trump administration's reversal of Obama's Cuba policies. He also has been one of the most outspoken critics of Venezuela's Maduro regime. He has been a key advocate for sanctions against Venezuelan officials and the recognition of Juan Guaido as the interim president of Venezuela in 2019. Rubio pushed for economic and diplomatic pressure to isolate the Maduro regime, supporting humanitarian aid to the Venezuelan people and urging other countries to back the opposition led by Maria Corina Machado and recognizing the president-elect Edmundo Gonzalez. Rubio has openly spoken in favor of stopping the remaining Chevron concession in the Caribbean nation, so the Maduro regime does not receive any profits from it. Rubio has also criticized Daniel Ortega's regime in Nicaragua, calling for sanctions against Nicaraguan officials involved in human rights abuses. He has advocated for the Nicaraguan Investment Conditionality Act, which aims to limit international financing to the Ortega regime unless democratic reforms are implemented. Despite of his allegiance to Donald Trump after confronting him during the 2016 Republican primary, Rubio has historically argued for a robust U.S. presence on the global stage, emphasizing the importance of American leadership to counter adversaries such as China. He's known for being a leading voice in Congress on addressing the challenges posed by China's rise. Rubio has been critical of China's supposed human rights abuses, especially on claims of genocide against Uyghur minority population in Xinjiang, and has advocated for sanctions against Chinese officials. He also supports measures to counter China's influence in international organizations and has pushed for a more aggressive U.S. policy to confront Chinese economic practices, including intellectual property theft and unfair trade practices. Meanwhile, he has also taken a firm stance on issues related to the Middle East, advocating for a tough approach to combat terrorism and address regional instability, being a critic of the Iran nuclear deal, arguing that it provided too many concessions to Iran. Rubio supported President Trump's decision to withdraw from the agreement in 2018 and has called for a maximum pressure campaign against Iran, including economic sanctions and diplomatic isolation, to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. At the same time, Rubio is a strong supporter of Israel, advocating for close U.S.-Israel relations. He backed the relocation of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, supports military aid to Israel, and has condemned the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel, being one of Rubio's most controversial stands on foreign policy. Marco Rubio co-sponsored the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act and the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act, which imposed sanctions on Chinese officials responsible for human rights abuses. He has pushed for the U.S. to take a firm stand against China's crackdown on freedoms in Hong Kong and its persecution of the Uyghurs, while he's being a proponent of using the Global Magnitsky Act to sanction individuals involved in human rights abuses worldwide. This act allows the U.S. to impose visa bans and freeze assets of foreign officials implicated in serious human rights violations. Now, we have looked at Marco Rubio's history on foreign policy, in some ways distant to President Trump's approach towards this issue. So, by being selected by Trump to become America's top diplomat, well, we can infer that he took this decision because despite of his isolationist agenda, we might see that at the end of the day, the United States has threats to its national security in the Americas. As an example, we have the border crisis and many of those people who have crossed are from Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua. So yes, it's in America's interest to take actions towards this country's regimes to guarantee stability in America's own backyard. Though without mentioning Hezbollah's presence in the Americas, especially in Venezuela, where the regime has not only gave them a sanctuary, but also passports to members of this group, President Trump has also made clear that according to him, Russia is not the main rival of America, but China. All of these are issues that have been addressed by Senator Rubio for many years. And in conclusion, we could say that Trump's foreign policy has its north on becoming slowly more into local or regional affairs, that without totally leaving foreign affairs.